Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. In the last episode, we discussed that Hinata Sakaguchi and her 4 subordinates were heading to the Monster Federation, intending to apologize and clarify the situation before the decisive battle with Rimuru. However, the 100 holy knights who had been following Hinata acted on their own, surrounding the capital city of Tempest, and engaging in battle with Shion's subordinates. What interesting events will unfold next? In this episode, we will talk about the holy demon war between Shion, Rimuru, Hinata, and others. So let's get started. As the holy knights engaged in battle with Shion, Hinata and her team had just left the inn and were preparing to set off. At this moment, a sense of urgency intermittently reached Hinata's mind. Her confidant, Nicholas Spiritus, was desperately trying to communicate something.
3 battle sages are participating. Team, be careful. 7 Lulu luminaries.
After delivering the most important sentence, Nicholas's response disappeared. Hinata's face turned pale, and she immediately realized that there must have been changes in the Falmouth Kingdom. In the urgency, Hinata used magic to call Pope Louis, the superior of the 3 battle sages, but the Pope said that he had not issued any orders. This left 2 possibilities: either there was some sudden event, or the 3 battle sages were stirred up by someone.
The 7 luminaries?
The unpleasant premonition became a reality, and Hinata immediately decided to use teleportation magic to return to the capital city of the Rubrios. However, everything was too late. Rimuru detected Hinata communicating with someone and mistakenly thought that Hinata was giving orders to the battlefield, so he used magic to interfere. With a crack, the magic conversation between Hinata and the Pope was interrupted, and at the same time, the air around began to vibrate, and the aura of a large-scale battle rushed toward them. The holy knights next to Hinata made surprised noises due to the sudden situation. But Hinata did not pay attention to them and rushed to the battlefield at full speed. On the other hand, Rimuru, Benimaru, Soei, Alvis, and Sophia also used spatial domination as planned, arriving at the battlefield before Hinata. By the time Hinata and others burst out of the forest and came to an open land, Rimuru and others were already standing there. Following Rimuru's line of sight, Hinata saw the defeated figures of her subordinates. In an instant, a nameless rage welled up in her heart. Hinata clicked her tongue and suppressed it, but this rage was not due to the defeat, but because her subordinates had adopted a completely hostile attitude and initiated the battle without authorization. In this situation, it was completely impossible to negotiate with Rimuru amicably. Rimuru calmly watched the battlefield, and Hinata also naturally stood there, measuring the combat power of the opponent while considering what actions to take next.
A one-on-one duel, I'll be your opponent.
Hinata recalled Rimuru's message. Seeing the equal number of people on both sides, she understood Rimuru's intention, and prepared herself for a one-on-one duel with Rimuru, ready to apologize through victory. At this moment, Shion, who was shrouded in a terrifying aura, took action, staring at Renard, who led 100 holy knights. Rimuru slowly turned his gaze to Hinata. After a silent stare, he opened his mouth to condemn the knights for their sudden military action. Although Hinata claimed she was unaware, Rimuru did not plan to believe her. The brief exchange ended without a resolution. Hinata's 4 subordinates thought that Rimuru was arguing unreasonably, while Benimaru and others believed that Hinata was the one who provoked first. The atmosphere at the battle scene became more tense. Then the war began. Shion, who descended from the sky and rushed towards the holy knights, was the first to attack. Accompanied by a violent explosion, a dent occurred in the ground in front of the knights, causing dust to fly. Facing this sudden situation, Captain Renard immediately ordered the knights to form a simple sacred barrier around Shion and apply defensive magic to their own side. By the time the knights were ready, the smoke and dust from the explosion had just stopped. What appeared in front of them was a single monster, with a slender figure, long purple hair falling down her back, a majestic face, and a single black horn on her forehead. Shion looked at Renard, greeted him with a proud face.
My name is Shion, the first secretary of Rimuru-sama. Choose between submission or death.
These words instantly enraged Renard. Regardless of what happened, there was absolutely no room for negotiation when it came to submitting to a demon lord's subordinate, a wicked monster. So Renard yelled passionately, ordering the knights to collectively cast holy magic, disintegration, also known as spirit particle decay. Holy energy bullets were poured towards Shion from all directions, but Shion remained unmoved, using her Odachi to block the energy bullets, causing the previously confident knights to be hit by their own attack, groaning in pain.
How is it possible? She can perform such a technique.
Renard was somewhat startled and quickly asked the knights to stop their attack. Shion, suppressing her anger, continued to persuade Renard, but Gard, another saint who was with Renard, roared in anger, thinking that Shion was trapped in the barrier and was bluffing, intending to drown out Shion's words. At this point, Shion's patience had reached its limit. In the next instant, Gard's right ear felt a strong heat, followed by a shock wave that ruptured his eardrum. Renard turned his head to look at Gard, and saw blood coming out of Gard's ear, and the big tree behind him had been broken from the base, falling to the ground with a creaking sound. It turns out that Shion had thrown a fist-sized rock at supersonic speed, brushing past Gard's head and hitting the tree behind him, breaking it. The knights became obedient immediately. Then Shion, with a disdainful smile on her face, threw out a bombshell statement.
Listen carefully, go ahead and unleash your strongest attack on me. If I can withstand it, you guys surrender, how about that?
Shion confidently said, while Renard and others were dumbfoundedly watching her. Then Gard, whose eardrum had been damaged, accepted this challenge to vent his anger. The knights began to focus their power to amplify Gard. Then Gard used an uncontrollable huge force to cast fire spirit magic, known as the Inferno Fire. But Shion, with a joyful smile on her face, picked up the Odachi and slashed at the incoming heat wave without saying a word, using her special skill Master Chef to resolve the crisis with the help of multi-layer barrier and ultra-speed regeneration. In the end, to make the knights feel despair more intimately, Shion cut open the sacred barrier with a single slash.
Impossible! Why is there such a monster?
Glancing at Gard, who seemed to still be in a dream, Renard made a decision and surrendered on behalf of the knights. On the other hand, Hinata quietly used her unique skill mathematician to observe Rimuru. After several months of absence, Rimuru had changed as if he had become a different person after becoming a demon lord, and his strength was unfathomable. The most direct manifestation was the report of her another unique skill usurper. The last time Hinata confronted Rimuru, the result of her appraisal was target unavailable, meaning that his power was completely below Hinata. But this time the result of the appraisal was the highest level of interfered. This was the first time this situation had occurred since she confronted the demon lord Luminous. Hinata couldn't help but sigh, threw the dragon buster in her hand aside, drew the moonlight rapier, a legendary weapon given by Luminous, and after removing all the limitations on her body, Hinata exerted her full power, surpassing the level of the enlightened, and became a true saint.
Only victory could make up for my mistakes, right?
With such determination, Hinata launched an attack on Rimuru. Hinata's speed was exceptional, like that of fighting between Rimuru and Demon Lord Milim Nava during Walpurgis Banquet. Even with the millionfold perceptual speed that Rimuru gained from thought acceleration, he was barely able to keep up. But Rimuru did not give up. He parried and counterattacked with his extraordinary physical abilities. Several rounds of attack and defense ensued without either side landing a single hit. Hinata felt a touch of anxiety. A human body has its limits, and prolonged combat can lead to fatigue. The longer the fight dragged on, the closer she came to defeat. However, Hinata also discovered Rimuru's weakness. Although Rimuru had gained great power after becoming a demon lord, his combat experience and technique were surprisingly lacking. Upon noticing this, Hinata switched to a tactic of altering her speed to create illusions for her opponent, a feint, in other words. Now it was Rimuru's turn to worry. He was putting everything he had into keeping up with Hinata's speed, while Hinata seemed to have an easy time, effortlessly controlling the details and playing with Rimuru with her superior swordsmanship. What's more, Rimuru was accumulating injuries, and if this went on, defeat was only a matter of time.
This is bad, really bad.
Rimuru thought, and he started to summon the almighty Miss Lord of Wisdom. Responding to Rimuru's needs, the Lord of Wisdom learned a new skill by analyzing Hinata's actions, future attack prediction. Traces of light began to appear in Rimuru's field of vision. If he countered along these light traces, he could perfectly parry any feints and possibly even put Hinata in a dire situation. Noticing that her attacks were being effortlessly received by Rimuru, Hinata instinctively changed her trajectory and disengaged from the battle. Upon careful scrutiny, she quickly realized that Rimuru had learned an advanced prediction skill. Winning through swordsmanship became an extremely difficult task. At this point, Hinata's chances of winning were shockingly low. The only way out was to use a secret technique that was not meant to be revealed. After coming up with a strategy, Hinata reset her stance. Unbeknownst to her, the surrounding battles had already been decided. It was as if time had stopped and everyone halted their actions and focused their attention on Hinata and Rimuru. In such an atmosphere, Hinata proposed to Rimuru that they decide the match with one final strike. If Rimuru could block this attack, Hinata would concede defeat. However, as she made this proposition, Hinata also seriously warned that the next strike would be extremely dangerous. Rimuru was somewhat perplexed. Why would Hinata warn him of the danger of the attack in advance? As an answer, the Lord of Wisdom explained that this was a sign of Hinata's reluctance to hurt Rimuru. Yet this only made Rimuru even more confused. But at the moment there was not the time to overthink on Hinata's motives. After giving instructions to Benimaru and others on the side, Rimuru accepted the proposal without any visible change in demeanor. Hinata nodded slightly and began to pray with a light-hearted smile. She started to chant in a refreshing voice, invoking the magic of disintegration, which had obliterated Rimuru's clone last time. This time, the power was absorbed by Hinata's empty left hand, emitting a dazzling bright light. Brilliant particles crisscrossed and danced in a dreamlike scene. She then infused the Moonlight Fine Sword with this light, which sped towards Rimuru at a speed beyond human reach.
Warning, defense impossible, evasion impossible.
A frantic warning from the Lord of Wisdom echoed in Rimuru's mind. Even with a million-fold perception speed, Rimuru could not evade. Luckily, Hinata had no intention of killing Rimuru, aiming not for the vitals. Even so, this was still a dangerous attack.
Warning, it is recommended to sacrifice the ultimate skill, Beelzebub, Lord of Gluttony, as a countermeasure.
In the critical moment, the final solution given by the Lord of Wisdom was to invoke the Lord of Gluttony the moment Hinata's sword made contact with Rimuru, completely devouring it. Thus, their skills clashed and Rimuru survived. But having exhausted all his strength, he collapsed, unable to move. Hinata, on the other hand, laughed heartily at the side, disarmed herself, and declared her defeat. So, the decisive battle with Hinata had ended, but the problem had not been solved. Just as Rimuru was about to proclaim victory, a flash of light caught the corner of his eye, and Hinata noticed it too. In front of them appeared the Dragon Buster Great Sword, swinging violently. Although the Lord of Wisdom sent a warning in time, Rimuru was unable to move. Hinata screamed and stood in front of Rimuru. Then, there was an explosion and a flash of light, and Hinata's body slowly collapsed onto the ground. Alright, that's the end of this video. In the next one, we'll discuss the aftermath of this battle, as well as Diablo's fight in Foamouth Kingdom. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.